Where's Fielder?
He's gone to the dogs.
Well, it's certainly good to be with a fella that I got to sit down with face to face for the first time at the recent Autumn Oaks, but a guy that I've been friends with on Facebook, and I've watched his post, and several of my friends are friends of his, and he's a longtime coon hunter from the state of Indiana that I'm very happy to have on the program today, Bruce Janssen. How are you doing, Bruce?
Doing good.
Well, that's good. We're doing good down here in the swamp, too. We survived that hurricane and came pretty much unscathed. Got a lot of rain around. I haven't been back out to the woods to see just how much water we're going to have to deal with. But is autumn coming to the heartland there in Indiana?
I see a few leaves starting to turn this week until tomorrow. I think it's been pretty warm. It's supposed to cool down quite a bit tomorrow.
Well, that's good. We've had a little respite here in Florida with the weather. In the evenings, it's cooling down into the low 60s, upper 50s. In fact,
oh my goodness!
First time we had, I had a fire out on in the fire ring out there, and we sat. The wife and I sat last night and kind of enjoyed the cooler weather. You know, we have so much heat and humidity down here, but they tell us it's going to pick back up a little bit by the weekend. But yeah, I miss that fall in the Midwest, that's for sure. You've got about another week, not week, but a month or so before your coon season opens, though, don't you?
Yeah, November 8th.
Okay.
I never paid that much attention to that. I never had many off nights.
Yeah, I know that feeling when I lived up there where coon hunting was good. I tried to go every night that I could, for sure. Well, we talked at Autumn Oaks, and you were on the episode, I think the part one of the interviews that I did at Autumn Oaks, and we got a little background there and all, but you're there in Otterbein, is that right?
Otterbein.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and that's near Lafayette, right, or Lafayette?
Yes,
How do
close.
you say it? Do you pronounce it Lafayette or Lafayette?
Lafayette.
Lafayette, I got you. All right.
Everything runs together here.
I got you. You grew up there?
Bruce? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I live about 3 miles from where I was born.
That's amazing. You know, I've always kind of envied people that get to stay, you know, where the roots are and all. Do you live in the country, Bruce? Or
yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Can you let a dog run loose where you are?
No.
Okay.
I live on a county line. It's blacktop, and
I got you.
They run through it pretty fast.
Yeah, I imagine. That's flat country, isn't it?
Where I live is down south of Otterbein, where I do most of my hunting. There's hills and hollers.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of like that, a little bit of variation in the
well, I don't like it as much as I used to.
Well, we talked about it at Autumn Oaks. How old are you, Bruce?
73.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I got you about 3 years. I'm going to have a birthday here next week.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I was looking at some history, some family genealogy and all, and I see that my grandfather on my mother's side passed away at 76. So at least I'm going to make it, I think, that far. And my dad's father, I believe, was 73, but I'm clinging to my mother's roots. She lived to be 100, and my dad 88. So hopefully I got a few more turn looses, or however you want to say it. Oh, me. Well, I tell you what, it gets away fast, though, doesn't it?
Yep. It sure does.
Yeah. Well, the reason that, besides just being a good guy to talk to, the reason I wanted to talk to you is pick your brain a little bit about, you've been real successful at starting young dogs and having good dogs. And down through the years, I know you, just to do a little name dropping here, I know that you trained dogs or started dogs for Russ Beller a few years ago. And of course, everybody knows about Russ and Pac-Man and Striker and all that, world championships and all the things that he accomplished. But let's go back a little bit and just start up this coon hunting journey that you had. You started out where?
I started out what?
You started out on this coon hunting journey where and how? How'd you get into it?
My brother-in-law coon hunted then, and I went with him a couple of times, and then I bought a puppy from him that was off of Oklahoma Spot.
Wow, that's going back. Yeah.
He was pretty much a natural, but I still did some things wrong, and I never did that again. I don't think. I'm sure I've made mistakes, but that's a good pup, good litter of pups.
Yeah. Well, when did it? I'm going to lay this label on you here, and I don't know that that's agreeable to you or whatever, but when did you become a student of training coon dogs? I think that's...
Probably that first dog.
Can you?
And but
Yeah.
before that, I had a couple of bird dogs, and I learned quite a bit from them. One of them, I got mad at her, and I knew that was a bad idea, and I put her up for 2 days, and 2 or 3 days before I got her out again, and what I'd been unhappy with her about her was gone. And so I tried that with other dogs when we had a disagreement about something I was trying to teach, and I put them up for 2 or 3 days, and many times the problem had disappeared. She had figured it out somehow, or they had. I'm not sure that's true, but it worked for me.
Well, I think that it is, and I've heard trainers and people, that like to start pups and work with young dogs and try to take them from that pup, maybe a well-bred pup to a coon dog, talk about doing that, giving them a timeout. Kind of reminds me of my grandmother. I think she invented that there in Tennessee when my cousins and I'd get a little rowdy. She'd put us in one of those straight back cane bottom chairs that she had there in the dining room. And so you sit there until you figure out, what you're doing wrong. And maybe it seems to work with dogs, and I'm not sure how they figure that out. I mean, do they just forget it, that behavior, or I don't know. Do you have any idea?
I think the last experience they had makes an impression on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I caught a dog running a deer and got them corrected to suit me, I usually put that one up and hunted a different one. Because I learned in them bird dogs that the last thing that happened made a big impression on them. And the number one thing, I was only 16 years old with that first bird dog, and uh, I learned, and I had a bit of a temper.
Right.
I learned you can't train a dog mad, and I don't know that I ever let a dog make me mad again. Unhappy, but not mad.
Well, I think you and I have a lot of lot in common there. As a young man, I was impatient. My wife would probably tell you I still am at times. But I was, and and I knew when I would lose my temper with the dog that, I was doing wrong. There was just something inside me that said that dog does not understand
Yeah.
why you're upset and why you're doing what you're doing. And until he can understand what you're trying to teach him, you're doing more harm than you are good.
Yep. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember Mother watching me through the kitchen window one time trying to train a dog to stand on a bench. And I was young and the dog was not cooperating. And I was getting heavy handed with the dog. And she stepped to the back door and she says, if I see you do that again, that's going to be the last time you fool with one of those dogs. So she had some pretty good advice. And I won't say that I never lost my temper with them. But it's easy to do with dogs. And for some reason we think, well, there can be that mentality that it's just a dog, but once you've been around dogs for the number of years that you and I have been, we realize that they're dogs, but they're very intelligent beings, and they have emotions and
Yeah,
memory and all
that's a
that.
big deal right there. A smart dog is easier to mess up than a lower intelligent dog, because dogs don't think like people, and people train dogs like people think.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a smart dog, and you can make a mistake easier.
Yeah, that's true, and they kind of process it, and they form their own attitudes and behaviors based on the way we act sometimes, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want, for the sake of the people that listen to this podcast, and there are quite a few, I always like. I was just reading something the other day. You can sit up and sit and listen to a speaker give an eloquent speech. He's articulate. He can hit all the high points, pop, pop, pop. But if you don't take something away from what that guy said that helps you or teaches you something, it's been a waste of time.
Yes, it is.
He hasn't got he hasn't accomplished anything. So what I'd like to do with this podcast now and going forward is to be able to help somebody out there that's trying to make a coon dog, trying to make a diamond out of a lump of coal, I guess, for lack of a better term. But, and that's why I definitely wanted you on the program today, because I believe you found some of the keys to doing that. So you started out training bird dogs. Did you basically get a book from somebody or watch a videotape or had
No,
somebody in the community, or how'd that go?
no, I went to the I grew up on a farm, and we had a few people come out to pheasant hunt, a lot of pheasants then, and I some of them let me go along, and I watched their dogs and seen things I liked and more things I didn't like and didn't understand why, but I knew I didn't like that in a dog, and I learned some stuff watching that. But then I got my first one when I was 16, and just kind of had an idea of what they was supposed to do, and uh, did what it took to make them that way.
And at that time, I know when I went to Michigan in 1983, there were still a few pheasants there in southern Michigan. I guess the bad blizzard of 79 or somewhere thereabout, they had a real bad blizzard there in Michigan.
We had it too.
Yeah. And that kind of really knocked the population down. And then I think the idea with the DDT and the deal of cultivating from ditch to ditch instead of leaving cover and all that, all those things came together to kind of stress the pheasant, and he kind of, there's still pheasants up there, but nothing compared, I guess, to what they
Nothing
were
close.
years ago. Mm-hmm.
All of that and the introduction of coyotes in our country made a difference.
Yeah, the coyotes, I'm sure, make a huge difference.
On that topic, about a half hour ago, we had a coyote in our yard out here. We got an old junk apple tree, and he came out of the cornfield and was nibbling on apples, crippled up in the front leg, and he didn't seem to care if anybody was watching him or not. He was 40 yards from the house.
Well, I think they lose their fear of humans, maybe. Of course, he could just be hungry. I don't know. But, Bruce, here where I live, I'm in a retirement community in West Florida, north of Tampa. It's a 55 and older community. It was at one time a golf course community, but they phased that out. And those areas are just greenbelt areas and all. We've got coyotes everywhere down here. And I live on in a subdivision with a wide street and sidewalks on either side. And one day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a coyote walking right down the center of the street. And the people around here have their little fluffy dogs, their little Pomeranians and all that. Yeah. And these coyotes snatch them up like candy, Yeah. You got to watch. So they're very adaptable, aren't they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the older gentleman that I hunted with for many years in Michigan could tell me when there were, were none up there. And, in southern Michigan. And no possums either. And how all that has changed. Have you got the armadillos up your way yet?
No. Probably 70 miles south of here, a friend of mine saw one last winter.
Yeah, I wonder why they head north, all these species. I guess it's better feed, maybe. I don't know.
That may be the reason. I don't know why armadillos would come up here.
Right. Well, we've got them down here. There's plenty of them,
Oh, yeah.
So far, I haven't had a dog that's wanted to fool with them. But once a dog gets bad after them, you got something to deal with. Because if they like them, they really like them. All right. Well, let's go back here now. So you started training the bird dogs, and I imagine were you quail and pheasant hunting with those dogs?
Yes.
So you had some bob white quail at that time.
Yeah, at that time there was a lot of quail.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun to hunt. I've done some of that in Florida and Georgia and enjoyed it. Well, okay, so then so you said you had an uncle that coon hunted?
No, he was my brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law, okay.
Yeah, I married my oldest sister.
I gotcha. And about
I
how old?
probably went with him maybe 3 times, and the bug bit me.
Did you have several coon back at that time?
Yes. Probably the peak, in my opinion, was late 70s. We had even more then than we do now, and we have plenty now.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of when I got involved in traveling a little bit, with UKC. Started in 78 with being a field rep for the World Championship. And then, as those years I traveled a lot in Indiana. And I always called Indiana a coon zoo, Because there always seem to be lots of them there. Well, how did you get? Well, so many of these podcasts. Well, how'd you get started? Well, I had a carbide light, or I had a lantern, and I went in a Model T, and all that sort of thing. But I guess I'd like to dig a little deeper. I mean, when did you start studying these dogs?
I'd have to say immediately.
Mm-hmm.
When I was training that first bird dog I got, I happened to win a mutt up at the grocery store that was probably part border collie, but pretty small. And I was training that bird dog to whoa and everything I could think of to teach it. And that little dog was out there, and within minutes of when I tried to show the bird dog something, that little dog knew it better than the bird dog. But he was really smart. But I immediately learned that jealousy is a great training tool, because all my attention was on the bird dog, and the little dog seen what I wanted her to do, and he just did it.
Did it
So
because he wanted to? Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was lucky to learn that jealousy is a great training tool. Anything that you're trying to teach a dog, if you can introduce jealousy in there, they'll learn it a lot quicker.
Do you think that goes? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Number one is when you first ready to hunt a young dog by themselves. That it's a great way to get them to do that. Somewhere way back, I don't remember how I met Randy Smith, but I bought a young female from him that was running and treeing. And that's about all she did. And she was out of Thunder's Wild Clyde.
All right.
And I hunted her about a week after I got her, and I said, well, heck, this thing's ready to go by herself. So I took her and a dog that I had then named Scout, and I took her to the first place, and she went hunting like a rocket with another dog. And I dropped her out, and she took off and went about 25 feet and realized she was by herself and skidded to a halt and turned around and came right back. So I put her back in the truck and dropped Scout loose and got lucky, and he just went in there 100 yards and treed a coon. She just about destroyed that box. I went and got Scout and brought him back and put him in the truck and drove down the road a half a mile and got that little female. I called her Clyde. Randy had Clydette for a name, and I wasn't going to do that. So she might have been the first transgender. But I called her Clyde.
Yeah.
But I drove down the road a half a mile and cut her loose, and she never came back again. Left in a dead run and wasn't coming back. She wasn't going back in that dog box. And that's worked on 100 of them.
Well, we got one that's just the opposite. She loves the dog box. We tried to make her jealous by leaving her in the dog box, and she's just as happy as a pig in mud to be in that dog box. And I don't want this session to turn out to where I'm trying to get a lot of free advice, not free, but I mean, unsolicited. I guess it would be solicited advice from you. But at any rate, I agree with what you're saying, and I've used that before. And you and I talked about this with this very dog that I'm talking about maybe tying her back and some of those things. Jealousy, I don't want to leave that topic because I think there's a lot of applications to jealousy in a dog. And see if you agree with me in this. And anytime you disagree, I believe I know you well enough that you'll tell me that you do. A lot of times we talk about these dogs that are hunt sour. They get to the point, they've been put in a lot of hunts. They've been dragged around. Maybe it's in a PKC state race or whatever, or they're hunted a lot by themselves maybe, and they're used to treeing all the coons, and they're the boss dog, and then they go out there and they get in a few hunts, and all of a sudden these other dogs are treeing the coons, and they don't want to back the dog, which most guys don't want them to back anymore. But rather than go on hunting, they just get out there and sulk around because they're jealous. Have you ever seen that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Going to see it a lot more with the way they're training dogs now.
Yeah.
And another thing they do is jealous tree over there 80, 100 yards and not have nothing.
Exactly. I have seen that one in the plot breed, I guess, more than any other. I don't know what it is, whether the plot tends to be more of a kind of a one-person dog, they kind of bond with you more. But I've seen that in my own my personal dogs, where they would, and then I did see it with a Walker female one time, but that I think was instigated by a rough dog in a cast when she was young, just qualifying for super stakes, and ended up having to hunt a late round and with a dog that I knew was questionable. But I understand the part about being maybe run off a tree or whatever, but just that jealous factor. What do you think causes that? I mean, how do all dogs have that capacity, or is it more so in some dogs than others? What do you think?
Well, they're all different. Several things can cause it. If these guys try to make a loner out of a dog that really don't have much, there was a dog in my area that they tried to make a loner, and he had no independence once at all. And he was a pretty decent dog about tree and coon, but he was a pack dog, and they tried to make a loner out of him. They caused all kinds of different problems. He'd jealous tree, or he'd go out there and pout like you're talking about. But pressure, I learned that in bird dogs too, because you gotta be careful how you correct a bird dog, because bird dogs to me is all about style and ability. You got to have the ability, but if they don't have style, I'm not going to like them.
You're right.
And you take the style out of them, so you can do the same thing with a coon dog. I know of several that putting pressure on them, keep them from covering other dogs. It puts them on the edge because they can get away from that other dog quicker. And I don't want mine on the edge, but they seem to like it. But every coon I ever treed in my life, except for one, was on a tree. So the more trees you got around, the more likely you are to tree a coon. Other than right now when you got cornfield coons, but that's a different story. But pressure, you got to be careful with that pressure, or you'll cause. When you stop one thing in a dog, you almost always cause something else, and you need to think about whether what you're going to cause is better or worse than what you got.
Every action causes an equal reaction. Yeah. Well, for sure, these dogs are complex, and it's not an easy thing. And it's always amazed me how, you can get one just start off like a house afire, and then it seems like something goes haywire with them, and
that's usually from over hunting a pup. If
Let's
you get a pup that starts out like you just said, a house of fire, it's hard to leave them home.
right.
And that's where the hunting them a couple of nights, leave them up 2 or 3 or 4, and hunting them a couple more. I always tried to hunt them 2 nights in a row, right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But I had one that was, man, he was just something else. And I was hunting him 3 or 4 nights a week with 2 or 3 nights off in between. And somebody hunted with me and they just had to have that pup. By that time, he was 9 months old. And season started right then. And he had to have that pup. And I was bad to sell dogs. Somebody offered me money. Well, they got him start a season, hunt him every night. And that pup never got an inch better than what he was at 9 months old.
Right.
And he should have. He was just progressing right along. They wore that pup out, and he never. I mean, he was never a bad dog, but he never got any better.
Well, I think well, I know it did. I saw this a lot back in my PKC days with the pup races. How you get this pup, trying to get a pup ticket to go win a truck,
Yep,
and you just pound that pup night after night after night somewhere,
yep.
until you just absolutely blew them up. They just. And then I've also seen dogs, and I won't mention any names, but I do recall a breeder that had some exceptional puppies that started out 3 or 4 months old, would do things you wouldn't believe a pup would do as far as running and treeing a coon. But by the time they were a year old, they were never any better than they were when they were 3, 4, 5 months old. It seemed like they peaked real early and then they just never progressed. And it could be what you're saying. Maybe they were hunted too hard.
I bet it was. Most problems dogs have are man made.
Well, you mentioned that before when we talked, and I'm afraid you're right. Well, these pups can be such head scratchers, and you just really, unless you've really studied them uh, for years, like you have, uh, you don't know what's the right thing to do. And I get a lot of mail through various sources about people wanting to know what to do with a pup that's doing this, that, or something else. I don't have all the answers for sure. I have my methods that I've used down through the years, and sometimes it worked and sometimes they didn't. But so all right, I'm going to give you the best bred puppy that I can find. How old do you want that pup to be when I give you that pup?
Well, preferably uh, I want them old enough for what I like. I want them old enough that they got a good mouth. And I was that way even back when I could hear good, and I can't hear very good at all now. But 3 or 4 months old would be ideal. So everything they learn is from me.
Right. You
Getting a
want them
dog
to
in
learn
from somebody
everything.
else,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bruce. I'm interrupting you.
getting a dog in from somebody else, which I did a lot back in the day. The first 2 weeks is always the dog finding out what I expect. Uh, I've never, even before I had a bad back, I never let a dog walk out in front of me. They walk back there beside me or they're in trouble.
Yeah.
But they pick that up pretty easy. But when somebody else has let them drag them through the woods and I get that dog here, that don't make me happy for a while.
No, there's going to be a lot of confrontation there until you get
When
that sorted out.
somebody's paying me to hunt a dog and they call me after the end of the first week, how's he doing? I said, well, I haven't taken him yet. I'm trying to teach him to lead. I'm not taking him until he'll eat. So,
Yeah.
and
You,
that's a problem with hunting dogs for other people. They want results right now, and that's why I quit doing that. I'm kind of I try not to make anything stupid mistakes, and you can't do it in a hurry.
well, that's for sure. And while you're talking about that leading situation, I've never been one that minded to go get somebody's dog and bring it back for them. If circumstances required it. But man, sometimes that gets to be a real chore just trying to get that dog to stay behind you, or stay back. And that's one thing that I've always demanded in my dogs too. But unfortunately, a lot of guys, they just go to the kennel and they either just turn the dog loose and let him go jump in the box, or they let that dog drag him to the dog box. They pick him up, put him in the box, and then every tree they make, that's dragging him off the tree, dragging him out there, and that's hard on the dog. The
Yeah.
dog is exerting an awful lot of energy, pulling and hassling. That's just a pet peeve of mine. You just happened to touch on it.
Well, dogs are like kids. They're happier if they have guidelines and limitations. Uh,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is.
Yeah, they need structure in their lives, and if they're everything, you're happy, then they're happy. I get that. So you want this pup to be about 3 or 4 months old. And you're going to teach him to lead and do the things around the house that make him
Yeah.
a good citizen, so you can enjoy the dog, not have a case of heartburn every time you go. Is that right?
Uh, yeah, it's also even more important that they enjoy me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Do you ever have issues with pups getting spoiled after you?
No, not as
Okay.
long as you got guidelines.
Okay. You want to
As
talk
long as they
about
know
that a
what.
little bit?
Um, Not jumping on you, leading, coming when they're called.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I don't believe in, and I admire the people that tone break their dogs and come back from a half mile away. Uh, I'm not going to do it, mainly because I'm going to go to that dog. When
Mm-hmm.
I turn them loose, wherever they end up, I'll get to them.
All right.
But the other thing is, I always want to keep that tone button in my back pocket. I might need it for something more important.
Right. So you
So,
don't use it just as a matter of every day.
yeah,
Yeah, any whim you have that you want that dog or want his attention, you tone him. Yeah,
yeah,
I see that. I watch some videos, and again, I'm not going to mention which ones and all, but some videos on YouTube of dogs that, were big game dogs hunting bear, and it just didn't want them to get into certain territory that run the bear, just tone them, get them back. It's just like it's just a convenience thing. If I'm hearing you right, you're thinking more of the terms of that dog's getting near a highway, he's getting in a place where he's not supposed to be, or something like that. Am I right?
well, I'm not going to hunt near a highway,
Yeah.
um, but getting where they're not supposed to be. Um, I've been yelled at a couple of times in over 50 years of hunting, but had one shot, and those dogs ran a coon across the field up to a house and treed on the guy's crib.
Mm,
Just once in a million
yeah.
happening. I've had dogs tree in the yard.
Right.
If there's a light on, I go to the house and some people weren't thrilled, but never had a problem in this country.
Right.
But I've lived here all my life, and
Mm-hmm.
most people know me too.
Yeah, that makes a
That's
big difference for
that's a big
sure.
advantage.
Absolutely.
But the tone button, I really admire those guys that do it right. But then I see the same guys quite often trying to use tone for something else too. And that tone to come back to you, no matter where they're at, has to be absolute. So it can't really be used effectively for something else.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and that's the second reason I don't do it. There's a lot of things the tone can be used for, a negative or a positive. But that's just. But mainly it's just because I'm going to them. If they get somewhere, and when I get in there around them and I say here, and they can hear me, they better get over there. That's all I
Yeah.
do is teach
Yeah.
here.
Exactly.
And that only means one thing. It's one word and it means one thing. The tone, just like shocking them, they try to do 5 different things with a shock.
Mm-hmm. And
And
expect the dog to know which one of those 5 things
absolutely,
they're
that's a
doing
case
at the
of
time. Yeah.
people thinking like people instead of thinking like a dog.
All right. Okay. Here's a situation that I think goes right along with what you're saying. You teach a dog the tone to come back, okay, to recall, as we say. Okay, now you got a dog that all of a sudden he's decided he wants to load up too quick on trees. So you tone him when you hear him loading up on a tree, when you know he's, let's just say it's been a short track, or you can tell by the sound of the track, whatever. You don't know, but you assume that dog is just getting ready to slick tree on you, so you tone him, and he goes on. Now, if you've taught either one of those things, he should do that action and not try to figure out, well, does he want me to come back or does he want me to leave this tree alone?
Right.
Does that's going along with what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
A tone to recall has to be absolute. When they hear that tone, they come to you. So if you try to use the tone for the situation you're talking about, the dog ain't going to understand. There ain't a dog alive or ever been alive that can understand that distinction.
Exactly. And this just conjures up all kinds of thoughts. Back before the days that we had uh, electronic collars and all, guys would whip a dog with a switch for not hunting. Okay. And he'd come in, he'd whip him. Then he decides he wants the dog and it's time to go home, and he calls the dog, and the dog comes in and he whips him for coming in. Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's
Yeah,
whipping the dog for different things, and the
yeah,
dog doesn't know the difference. He
yeah,
whips him to make him go hunting, and then when he doesn't come in, is what I'm trying to say, he whips him for that.
yeah,
So the dog is like, I don't know whether I'm getting whipped for coming in or for not coming in.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many guys I've seen them whipping for coming and going both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine was relating a story to me, hunting with a young hunter. And, guy was really getting rough with the dog. And I don't like to talk about that too much on this podcast, because there are people that listen to these podcasts that are not our friends, and they're looking for things to use against us. And so if they can paint coon hunters and animal abusers with the same brush, they'll gladly do that. But, this guy was just getting really rough with this dog. And he said, man, do you think that dog has a foggiest idea why you're upset with him and why you're punishing him like that. He doesn't. He doesn't understand at all. And all you're doing is just taking your frustrations out on the dog. Is that right?
Yeah, with the anger thing, I found out a cold-blooded switching is way more effective than a beating. They got this thing all positive training now. I've never seen a dog in my life that was well trained without having some negative. Now, negative might be act.
Mm-hmm.
A
Right.
lot of times that's all I have to do with any dog I've trained.
Right.
And you might have to switch one a little bit.
Right.
But there's some kind of negative training to every well-trained dog I've ever seen. People try to deny it. They talk about if a house dog gets up on the counter, you redirect them. Well, redirecting them didn't make them forget about that counter forever. It
No.
made them forget about it for 3 seconds.
Correct.
Um,
And those of us our age, and I don't know, do you have children, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do too. And my parents believed in a switch. Okay. If I needed it, I got those little legs kind of, they got stung, and I didn't like that. And I didn't want it. Now, my parents never beat me, as you say, I never had a beating in my life. But the same thing with the dogs, you've got to make it mean something to them. You've got to get it in there, to where they understand what you're trying to do. And, anytime we talk about that subject, there's always going to be those that say,
Sure.
just like parents today that think
Yep.
anytime they correct their child, maybe put a whop on that bottom, that you're going to, damage that kid for life. I don't believe that. I didn't believe it
I
in
don't.
raising my kids, and my parents didn't believe it when they raised me either.
Yeah, I don't think a parent has ever raised a child in anybody's life, anywhere, anytime, that didn't make a mistake. And it's the same thing with dogs. If you can keep from getting mad, hopefully the mistakes are minimized.
Correct. Okay, so let's get back to this nice young dog. Okay, this well-bred dog. We've got him leading now. He's acting like a pretty good citizen. What do we do with him now?
Take him for walks in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
and let him see every kind of obstacle he's going to have. And don't walk him down a lane. Don't walk him down the edge of the woods unless you're one of them people that want them to run the edge, and then that's where you take them.
Right.
If that's what you like, and that's okay. Everybody don't have to like the same thing, but creek, preferably start out with little bitty creeks that you can get on the other side, and don't help him over because he'll come. He ain't going to want to be away from you.
Right.
And read the pup. Rip that I'm hunting now, I just did that stuff. I never showed him a coon. Never showed him a coon tail. Never live trapped any coons. Just about a week before he was 6 months old, I took him hunting with another dog. And the second night, him and Tommy both struck, and they run split tracks, and they split trees. But he was a dog. I just knew he was going to do it. Didn't have to do. And you have to manufacture something sometimes and make them do something. But he was one of them that just going to go hunting and going to tree coons.
Well, that's the kind that we all want, those that do it naturally. And I was always of the mindset that the well-bred ones, the ones that are bred right, will pick it up naturally, that the genetics are there. They'll come out if you give the pup the opportunity for those genetics to manifest themselves. I mean, that's always the way I looked at it. I always thought that coonhound training was overstated in a way. You mentioned bird dog. There's quite a bit of training involved with bird dogs because you want them to perform a certain way. You want them to respond to commands. You want them to back. You want them to whoa, these different things. But with a coonhound, primarily, you want to turn it loose. You want it to go hunting, and you want it, when it strikes a track, to run that track the right way. And when it locates the tree, to stay at that tree and bark till you get there. I mean, those are the fundamentals, I think, of coon hunting. And those things are really not taught, are they?
No, a majority of the things as far as training goes in a bird dog, you can manufacture a situation to make sure they know what you're after.
Right.
A coon dog, there's some things you can make up a situation, but like you said, most of it they've just got to pick up in the woods or have it naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't be. Don't be afraid to use your imagination, but make sure your imagination isn't going to do harm. The best example of that is a dog I got in here from off of Matney's Southern Pride. He was bad to babble. And there's a few things that you always do to stop him from babbling. Turn another dog loose and hang on to him, and make sure he knows what quiet is, and that usually makes a difference in them. And sometimes you have to get rough with them to make them shut up. And but that one off of Matney's Southern Pride, nothing worked. And one night I was mad at him, or well, as mad as I let a dog get me. And I said, man, I was just thinking to myself, I ought to tie that rascal's mouth shut. And I remembered saying that to myself. And the next day I said, well, I'm going to try that. So I stopped and bought a spool of yarn and tied one around his mouth to see what size I needed, and then tied 20 or 30 more and put them in my pocket. And within a month, I knew it was going to come off. I didn't know how far out there, but the yarn was working off, or he scratched it off, whatever, and it took his mind off of barking. And within a month, he never babbled again. I drew a guy that hunted with him quite a bit, knew he was bad to babble, but he didn't know I'd done anything about it. And when we were getting ready to turn loose, he was inching forward trying to get ahead of me to make my dog babble. Because back
Right.
then, on or before the third bark, you had to track him.
Yeah.
So it was a big deal then. And every time we turned loose, he'd move farther in front of me, and I just stayed back and grinned. And he never got that dog to babble once.
Did you ever hear the old deal, the guys chewing tobacco in the dog's mouth?
Yeah. I didn't try that one.
I don't chew tobacco, so I never tried it, but I've heard guys say that they do that. And by the time the dog got that spit up and all, he'd forgot about babbling. We don't recommend that method on this show.
I don't think any dog with any brains would go anywhere until he got rid of it.
That's right.
And then he'd be farther behind and bark harder, probably.
Harder to catch back up.
But that yarn thing, I never used it before, and I never used it since. So don't be afraid to use some imagination, but do no harm, just like you're a doctor.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention, So there, you're thinking, I guess the point number one, students out there, if you're taking notes, is, pay attention. You think about the situation and think, use what means you have available to you. You might come up with something that works.
Yep.
But
Uh,
that's
I,
interesting. I'd never heard of that before, Bruce. I learned something today.
I only used it once. And if you hunt in any hunts at all, you should realize right away that minus points will destroy your chances of winning.
Yep.
But most of the minus points I see in dogs are man-made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. And, we hear this a lot with guys, I talk about the coon hunter's excuse shirt, all the reasons why you didn't win a cast on the back. But, you hear guys say a lot of times, I made a bad call. Sometimes they just say that to cover up the fact that their dog didn't stay treed or whatever.
Yeah.
But that is true, and everything reminds me of a story. When I was with AKC, we had a youth hunt down at all around Athens, Tennessee, down there, and we asked John Wick to come out and talk to the kids. And he did, and I will remember really well one of the main things he told the kids. He said, "Don't put minus points on your dog that he
Yep.
doesn't deserve," And it gets the kids thinking about that because, kids and young hunters, new hunters, kind of want a gun for that first tree or gun. I heard another well-known hunter tell a guy one time, he said, everybody in this cast knows your dog got first tree, but you didn't need that first tree. That doesn't mean you have to take it just because your dog got it, and sometimes those first trees don't turn out the best, so.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's good stuff, Bruce. Definitely good stuff. Um, what are some of the dogs that you've had your hands on that you'd like to talk about, or you remember especially, or you really liked? Or I know this rip dog you got right now is one that you like pretty well. Tell us about him.
Well, if I had a dial, I'd make him a fancier tree dog. He's probably a 70 bark a minute tree dog. And he chews a little bit. That come from leaving him treed too long in the summertime.
Yeah,
That's man-made, but that's the way I expect a dog to stay, whatever it takes for me to get there.
yeah,
And he could bark a little more on the ground sometimes, but if he gets on and he's smart, if he hits a hot track and he gets up on it where it appears he thinks he can catch it, he ain't going to bark again until he trees.
right.
One night I think about he barked 6 or 8 barks right at the beginning, and next thing I knew, he was up that holler another 400 yards treed. So he went 300 or 400 yards without barking on the ground.
Yeah, yeah,
Easiest dog to recut I've ever had a hold of. After the first tree, now the first 6 or 7 feet, uh, he was a handful. He would bite me for trying to get him off the tree, and I didn't do anything about it till he was about 16, 18 months old because he wasn't ready. But just the spinner dog that I sold Beller was the same way. You had to drag him the first 5 feet, and when you got him 5 or 6 feet off, just like Rip, they forgot all about that tree.
yeah.
You can recut Rip from 5 feet away from the tree. and a serious tree dog. Twice he caught coons on the ground that he didn't even come close to killing, probably hadn't even bruised them. And when I got up there, wasn't no need of killing that coon. So I just got him off of it, and the coon took off to the side, and I led him about 10 feet like normal and recut him. And that coon was out of his mind.
Yeah.
He just went the direction I sent him. I don't think I've ever seen a dog like that. Spinner was like that off a tree, but he wouldn't have forgot that coon on the ground.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty extreme for sure. But
Yeah.
you see some of these dogs that you just can't, and I wonder why guys don't train that out before they get to a hunt. But some of these dogs that just want to continually go back to the same tree, just go back, go back, go back. And that my dad, he used to say a dog that chases cars is has a mental problem. He believed that. He said a dog that sits there in that yard, and every time a car goes by, he runs it down to the end of the fence post down there. I mean, he can go further, but he stops and he comes back, and that's
Yeah.
when he does. He said that dog's retarded. So, but anyway, some of these things like that, you think it's brains. It's got to be intelligence, in the dog that knows. Hey, I was taken off that coon. That's the end of the story. But well, what are some dogs that you remember down through the years that you really
Uh,
liked?
Probably of an outside dog, the first one that always comes to mind was Beller's Handsome Harry.
Okay.
Uh, of any other person's dog that I ever hunted, I probably liked him the best.
Yeah.
He wasn't the best scorecard dog, and he wasn't the best coon dog I ever hunted, but he was probably the best at both combined that I ever hunted. Um,
Yeah.
he and and I got him, I think, early April, and hunted him for 6 months. And Beller's one of the best owners. He'd call you if you had a dog of his. He'd call you about every week, see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him if he wanted me to hunt him in the hunts. He said, "Well, hell, is he ready?" And I said, "Well, you can win right now." And I won 2 registered hunts, and Beller had a second on him. And then I won 5 straight night champion casts, but I got beat in one hunt. So that's, what is that, 8 in a row?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Uh, he wasn't unbeatable, but you sure had your hands full when you drew him.
Mm-hmm.
And he somewhere in there, I said, "You going to hunt this dog in World Hunt?" He said, "Well, heck, he can't win it, can he?" I said, "Well, if there's a 2-year-old in the country that can win it, this is it." And they picked him up right before the World Hunt went to it and won it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
he was good. He had a locate. He might work a tree a little bit, but when he gave that bark, you could write him down.
Yeah.
He was going to tree there. Another one I hunted for Beller was Charlie Manson. Not in Harry's class, but a pretty nice dog.
Mm-hmm.
They picked him up and went to the World Hunt and got 7th or 9th, I don't remember. Ed Johnson hunted him. Junior, or not Junior, Doug Jackson hunted Harry in the World Hunt. The spinner dog that I mentioned, the best scorecard dog I've ever seen still to this day. He wasn't even in the top 30 in coon dogs that I've hunted, but he could score points. He was going to probably score on anything they treed, and he'd have two by himself almost. Of course, them were 3-hour hunts then too. Beller and Randall Myers bought him, and I don't remember, 2 or 3 weeks later they put him in PCA then, World Hunt, and got 5th, and then hunted him in the UCHA World Hunt and got 2nd. He was he just knew how to score points. He wasn't that good at. He was a decent dog as far as treating coons, but he's like Larry Bird. He knew how to score points when he had to score points.
Yeah, well, there's some of them seem to have that knack, and well, listen, back in that era, the dogs were not expected to be so totally independent as they are today, were they?
No, but you had to have some of it because there at the beginning, the first 10 or 15 years I competition hunted, there was a lot of times I had the only dog that could treat.
Yeah.
Unless they come in and treat with mine, they didn't know. I mean, that happened a lot. And then you made the transition back in that one dog's day where that's all they knew was to treat. And now we've gone a little bit closer to a balanced dog, but no, it was it was a pack dog deal back then for the most part. Spinner always treated a couple by himself. Harry got by himself a fair amount, but he wasn't anything close to a loner. Although way back 50 years ago, I had a black dog that I bought as a puppy, and he was the original loner.
Oh yeah.
And the jealousy, he taught me more about jealousy too. A lot of it negative. If dogs come in and treat with him 2 or 3 times, it was going to make him mad. And I've seen him many times set those dogs up on a tree and then get down and go over and treat a coon.
Yeah. Now you talk about intelligent animals and this just jealousy thing and all, an animal being able to think something like that through, to set those dogs up, and I've seen this myself and I've heard about it all my life of dogs that would do that, and then of course you got the dogs that would didn't like to be hunted with pups, and they'd get them pups and run them out of the country, get away from them or whatever. Or, like you say, set them up, maybe,
Yeah, they puppies really make them mad, one way or the other.
Yeah, we had a little bit of skip there in the phone communication there, but well, listen, Bruce. Once you get a young dog doing pretty good, when do you decide whether you want to take him to town or not?
Well, they got to be pretty solid mentally because they're going to see some bad stuff. That's the main thing. It doesn't matter how good they are treeing coon at a young age. They got to be able to handle the stupidity that you can get in a cast of dogs. Anytime you put 4 kids together or 4 dogs together,
Yeah,
something's going to go wrong.
somebody's going to say, "Hey, watch this."
It's like they say, let's do something stupid.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
But
okay.
they need to be able to handle it mentally before.
Right.
And the youngest I ever hunted one was 10 months in a hunt, and he won the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like he was 5 years old when he was born.
I
Just
get
an
you.
unusual dog.
Yeah.
Usually it would be. We talked about over hunting a puppy a while ago.
Yeah.
Uh, Almost without fail, they're 15 or 16 months old before I start stringing them out.
Mm-hmm.
And the overwhelming majority of the time that I put one in a hunt was after I'd put a hard month or two on them. There's been exceptions. Rip was ready to win when he was a year old, easily.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I'm going to ask.
that's
Yeah, go
unusual.
ahead.
That's unusual.
Well, I'm going to ask you for some advice
They're
here.
all different. That's the main thing you got to remember if you're trying to train a dog. This one ain't the same as that last one you trained.
Right. Okay, I'm going to throw this out to you and just get your advice here before God and everybody, as we used to say. My
I
partner,
didn't.
I said, I'm going to ask you for your advice on something here and do it right here in front of God and everybody, okay, on this podcast. All right, my partner and I have this plot pup down in North Carolina. He's 11 months old. He's going to be 12 months old this month in October. He's been as of today, he's been in 8 casts. He's won 4 of them with plus points, treeing coons on his own. I am battling with myself, and of course it's not all my decision because I have a partner and a real good partner, good dog man that's hunting him. Normally I'd say that's too young to be hunting a dog in the hunts. Now, he's been hunted in a general area there in North Carolina where my partner knows most of the dogs. He's said, if I know that there's a bad dog in the cast, I'm not going to put him in there. I'm going to withdraw him or whatever. We've had no problems with him. He doesn't have any aggression issues or anything like that. He was hunted at 2 clubs last weekend, the weekend of this hurricane. And on Friday night in pouring down rain, he got striking tree on the only coon that was treed on the cast. And he won that cast with 2 1/4. The next night he was hunted in a double header. And he when the hunt was, he never opened his mouth. The hunt was over. He had the driver range at about 900 yards and picked him up at the end of the hunt. The late round on that, the second hunt of that doubleheader, first time in his life, he struck it and run it right, a deer. Now, what's your thoughts about this dog with just that limited amount of information?
The first part, it depends. It partly depends on the pup mentally, how much I would do. I've personally never seen or raised or trained a pup in my life that I would hunt in a double header in one night.
Okay.
That's too much. That's too much for a year-old pup.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, now keep in mind these are just 1 hour hunts.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that to a pup. The other thing, hunting him one and every weekend, like I said before, a year old for me is too young to be hunting them 5-6 nights a week. So he's not getting if I'm hunting him, he's not getting what he needs during the week. If I were going to hunt a year-old pup in hunts, I can't imagine maybe once hunting him this weekend and again next weekend. But for the most part, I would put a couple weeks in there, because then you've hunted him 4, 6, 7 nights in between the hunts by himself.
Right. Well, he won the first 2 casts at 10 months old. And he's hunting in these 1-hour hunts against usually 2 other dogs, sometimes 3 other dogs. But the pup, and I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, the pup has been a pup that doesn't pay any attention to the other dogs. If you go up the creek and the creek forks and the other dogs go left, he'll go right. If they go up on the hill to the left up there, he'll go up on the hill to the right. I mean, he's just...
And that's great for a puppy that age being in a hunt. But can he handle a cast where all 3 dogs come and cover him?
Yeah.
And you don't know ahead of time if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
well, now he has had dogs to cover him since, just like on that tree in the rain and so forth. But yeah, well, the whole point is, Bruce, I thought you kind of agree with me. Overall, I think it's a little young. I would not recommend. I saw the other day on Facebook that a red bone pup at 8.5 months old has made Grand Night champion. I have to wonder, I mean, is this pup just a freak? What's and you got to know the whole story. You got to know, and I know that a pup 10 months old, as our pup fever is, would not have been winning like that on those 3-hour hunts back in the day when I was running competition hunts, or when I went, when I went to UKC, and through those years when the hunts were really cranking and we were having 100-dog RQEs, just, were not uncommon at all. And all that. There's no question in my mind that it's a lot easier today. Some guys might disagree with me, but common sense tells me it's a lot easier today to make a dog, but to title a dog out than it was back then.
The hour hunts increases the chances of a mediocre dog winning a cast.
Yeah.
The shorter the hunt,
yeah,
the more likely the best dog in a cast gets beat.
Sure, a lot of luck comes into it. Getting that first strike is important. And this little dog, one thing I like about him a lot is that he is honest. He doesn't babble. And when he opens, he's struck. Today, that in a 1-hour hunt, that first strike is important.
Oh, yeah.
But now when they strike them off the chain, there's not much you can do.
Yeah, I've been there, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But, well, Bruce, I know that you've had a lot of success training dogs, and anyone can listen to you for a short period and know that you've got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. This may be difficult to answer, but what do you think is the most important thing you've learned down through your years about training coon dogs?
Listen to your dog.
Okay.
There's a friend of mine that comes to hunt, never knows what the dog's doing. Heart of gold, good guy, got a good dog, and he'll listen, but he's not studying the dog. You study your dog. Don't just listen, study. Now, I can't now because I can't hear worth a darn. But even 10 years ago, if they made a bark, I knew what caused it and what they were in when they made that bark. Next to water, in a thicket. But with these loners, uh, a lot of these guys that are great handlers now would have never won back 40 years ago when the dogs were together because they don't know what their dog's doing. But if your dog's always off over there by themselves, all you got to do is know the score and the time and what your dog sounds like. Back then, if you wanted to win like I expected to win, you better know what your dog was doing. And if that bark meant the next one was going to be a locate, I mean, I'd say 30 or 40% of the dogs will tell you they're getting ready to give a locate before they give one.
Yeah. Yeah.
A and
squeal, a
something,
whine. Yeah.
different bark,
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
But and when I needed to, I've treated dog before they barked up.
Mm-hmm.
But they were going to bark up within 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah. And
Now
that
that,
was all part of being a good houndsman and knowing, like you say, knowing your dog. I had a Walker female that had a scream and locate, and you could hear her for a country mile, as we say. And I used to frustrate this one guy in particular that would draw me in Michigan. But when I'd hear her give that bark wasn't a third of the way out, I had her treed. Well,
yep,
he'd say, "You can't tell that dog's treed. Those dogs, it's just a roar in there." I said, "I'm not listening to that roar. I'm listening to my dog. And when I hear that bark, I'm going to tree her." And just examples like that. And I've said this on this podcast before, but it seems to me, and I'm not out there every night with these guys in these pro sport hunts or legacy hunts or whatever, with the large entry fees and all that. But to me, it would be a simple thing if I knew what my dog's sounded like, just like what you said, for me to walk up to the judge and I'd say, "Judge, do you hear me in there right straight north?" The judge says, "Yes." I'd say, "Okay, go ahead and tree me right there, tree Joe right there." All the time in the world to make my decision, to take my tree, to listen to my dog, to kind of see if he was settled in right or whatever. We didn't used to have that luxury because they were pretty much all in there together. And you had to figure out the score before you had to keep that score in your head all the time. So you knew whether you needed that first tree or maybe would you just take a last just to protect your strike on a questionable tree.
yeah, that's one of the things that kept me from being I was probably slightly above average as far as a handler goes, but and what kept me from being one of the best probably is because I never paid any attention to whether I needed first tree or not. I never took second tree when I had first out there. If my dog got treed, I treed him. It didn't matter what the
Yeah,
situation
yeah,
was, and
yeah,
that was could have been a liability. But a good story about knowing your dog. I had one that I called Drum that was a straight chop mouth dog, track and tree, but he had the greatest locate one bark locate I ever heard in my life. It just sounded like he cut a woman's throat, a big, long scream. And every hunt, if he made that scream, I treat him,
Yeah.
except for one tree and one hunt. And I was hunting, you probably knew A.J. Thompson, didn't you?
Yes. Yep.
And I was hunting against him and a local guy that always had a good dog, and Drum was having a good night. And he come in over there a couple hundred yards to our side and made that locate, and I didn't tree. The only time I don't know, I probably hunted him in different kinds of hunts, 14 or 15 hunts. I don't know how many trees each hunt, but I treat him every time as soon as he started that locate, except for that one time. And
Well, I got to ask, why didn't you tree him that one time?
something wasn't right.
Just didn't sound just right, huh?
Something I don't. Matter of fact, AJ and Marvin, the other guy, both of them. Why didn't you tree him there? I don't know. He got down and left.
Oh, he
Never
did
seen
get
him.
down and leave.
Yeah, never
Well,
seen
I'll
him
be
leave
darned.
another tree in all the time I had him.
Now you come out looking like a genius there, though.
Yeah, yep. They asked me why I didn't tree him, and I couldn't tell them. I didn't know, but something wasn't right.
Well, that's that communication between you and your dog that's so important. And
Yep,
I hate to see electronics take all that away from coon hunting. You know?
I do too. I miss that.
Yeah.
You don't have to be. I mean, a lot of them guys, if anyone listens to this, a lot of them guys, it's going to make them mad. But you don't have to be any kind of dog man to win now. If your dog's always off there by himself, you don't have to know every dog bark that dog makes. Now, a lot of them good handlers do. I'm not taking any credit from them. But some of them guys don't know anything about a dog, and they're great handlers.
Yeah.
You got to know the score. You got to know the time. And know what your dog sounds like.
Well, there's so many elements to this game, you know, and that was always, you know, when we said Bruce Janssen is a good dog man, that had a lot of ramifications. There was a lot of different things that came to play in that, you know. And there'll always be the criticism of the people that have money that can afford to go more and hunt more and pay bigger entry fees and all that. I mean, that's human nature. Guys say, well, I just simply can't do that. Therefore, you know, I can't buy a horse that's capable of winning the Kentucky Derby. I don't have the wherewithal. And if I did, you know, well, I guess I could hire the people that knew how to do it. But, you know, there will always be that factor that's in there. But I believe that the old boys that started this game back in the 50s after World War II, those boys that sat down there in Alexander City in Alabama and drew up the first set of rules. And I was fortunate to sit down with John Carter, who was one of those guys, sat on his front porch and talked to him about that and how, you know, how they came to come up with the rules and all. But they basically were trying to simulate an actual coon hunt as much as possible and credit the dog, you know, for doing the work. And that was the premise from the start. And I think and there's always been the bully in the cast, the guy that didn't call his dog honestly, the guy that wouldn't see your coon or my coon or all that. That's human nature. That's always going to be a factor in this game. But basically, the idea was to turn 4 dogs loose and see which one could strike the first, which one could move that track to the tree. And, the guys say, well, the 225 tree points made the 125 tree points made the slick treeing dog. Well, no, the best track dog, should get to the tree first and get first tree if he is a tree dog. I don't know. Those are just a bunch of my philosophies. But at any rate, the game has changed. There's no question about it. The game is different now than it was then, don't you think?
Way different.
Yeah, yeah.
And another thing about minus points, quite often when you read those where they report back in the finals of a big hunt, and it's on Facebook, and you read through there, and somebody takes a minus because their dog left a tree, and he's sitting in there by himself. That dog probably told him when they got treed that he wished he hadn't done it. Not every time, but some of them times that dog told them before they ever called him treed that they wasn't going to stay there.
Yeah.
A friend of mine comes up quite a bit, and he's got a dog that's a really good scorecard dog. But he barks up some when he has no intention of staying there. But he tells you every time he ain't going to stay there. And
Yeah.
he told me himself that he learned something from that, because he'd say, free that dog or whatever, just messing around like some do in pleasure hunt. I said, you messed up. He ain't going to stay there. How did you know he wasn't going to stay? Well, he told me he wasn't going to stay. That's you don't have to have that much now. If they're off there by themselves, there's no reason to take a minus, because he'll tell you when he's going to stay.
This reminds me of back when I was a young man hunting in the hunts back in West Virginia. Had a pretty nice dog. Called him Rowdy. Hunting up north of my hometown, up toward the center of the state. And this dog trailed up the creek there. And we were all just kind of standing around there quiet, the whole cast together, and there was a dog or two opening. And this Rowdy dog, he located. And I said, he's going to tree right there. I need to tree that dog. And this guy goes, now there's a lot of drains and stuff right there in that area where that dog is. He heard the dog too. He could tell the dog was about to get treed because he'd give a locate or two, but he hadn't settled right in. But he was a dog just like you explained. If he gave those locates, he's pretty much going to be there. So anyway, long story short, I didn't tree the dog. Somebody else grabbed the tree out from under me, cost me the cast. If I'd have just listened to my dog that I knew what he was doing, I would have treated him, but I let him plant that seed in my mind that there was a hole there or something, and I was going to end up getting minus. So sometimes you can think too much,
Oh, yeah. I had one many years ago, a Walker dog. He's a straight chop mouth dog, but he had a pretty good changeover, not great, but he was a first and first dog, and I'm a first and first personality. And it seemed like almost every hunt, I'd get a minus tree right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
But he'd bail me out.
Yeah.
He'd score tree enough coons and first enough that he'd bail out that 100 minus. But I wasn't very smart sometimes too.
Well, that's it. And, once you throw that, you put that. I had a guys laugh at another podcast that I did before this one, and we had a story on there about Junior's dog. And it was an old boy that hunted with us at our club back in West Virginia. And Junior would want to tree his dog. His dog's name was Lead. And he'd say, "Tree old Lead." And then he'd say, "No, wait a minute. No, I'm not." He's not.
No, you can't do that.
And we'd say, "Doggone it, Junior, when you
Yeah,
tree the dog, he's treed. You can't take it back."
I did that. I did that with Fiddler a few times. He would change his mouth if he was a real thicket and having trouble getting through there. He would change his mouth, and like a dummy, I would tree him sometimes on
Yeah,
that, and immediately know that I'd messed up.
yeah, yeah. What's the biggest mistake you think people make in trying to train a dog?
Um, in training,
Yeah, in getting one ready, let's say, trying to take him from that
getting in
started
a number
dog to a finished dog. You know,
number one, getting in a hurry.
yeah,
That's a number one mistake. Trying to make a gold out of iron uh, in a week. That's number one mistake they make, and that's what they wanted me to do. And I just
I
they
got
were
you.
always in a hurry.
Yeah,
Uh, you can't be in a hurry. Some dogs, like your pup, if she wasn't mad about being in the box, it's one of two things: either she ain't ready or she ain't got it.
yeah,
Because no dog that's going to make a dog is going to be happy in the box when another dog's treeing a coon right over there.
right. Oh, if there's a tree going on right there, fairly close to the box, oh yeah, she wants out of there then. But she just seems to be content. When she goes hunting, she's just as apt to wind up back at the truck hanging around.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. It just
Either she
doesn't
isn't
seem.
ready or
Yeah,
either she isn't ready or she hadn't got it.
I
And she
think
may
that's
get it,
yeah,
may not get it till she was. I had one that treed a coon when she was 8 months old and did a little bit here and there. And I don't think she treated another one until she was 15 or 16 months old.
yeah,
And I don't know why I kept her
right.
because that's not my nature. I want to see improvement.
Oh, me
Not
too.
every time I go, but every week I want to see something better. But
Well,
I
this
kept her. By the time she was 2, that was a good dog.
yeah. Well, two things influence you. This dog should be doing it because of the way she's bred.
Yeah, I've
She's
hunted with a litter mate, and she's got a few flaws as far as becoming a winner, but she's a nice little dog.
yeah, exactly. And this one has come so far. From absolutely no interest in anything out there. You know.
That's hard to read too from somebody telling you about a dog like the litter mate. Uh,
Mhm.
Bucky Bucky's got her, and he brought her up, I think, 4 times, and we always had her with his cane dog and whatever one of mine we was hunting. So we had 2 dogs out there,
Right.
independent, treeing coons, and she didn't do anything. Well, that's not true. She get out and stir around pretty good.
Hmm.
You didn't see her, and that fourth night or fifth night, I don't remember. We was coming out of one place where we treed 2 coons, and she hadn't barked, and he says, well, she's still got too much puppy in her. And I'd seen her 4 nights, and she ain't got any puppy in her. But he was misreading what the problem was. The
Mm-hmm.
problem was 2 dogs out there treeing coons, and there wasn't anything available for her.
Yeah.
And they were doing stuff, and she just didn't do anything. So we just loaded up and took off down the road and pulled up to a woods that he'd been in before, and it ain't very big. And this was back there in spring when frogs were working.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing better for a puppy. And we pulled up there, and he said, "Which one you gonna turn loose here?" Because I never turned more than one dog loose in there. It was really small, 15 acres or something.
Yeah.
And I said, "Your pup." And he said, "All right." So we walked out there and got her in the pond, and she went out there and stirred around a little bit and started working, and just came over to the edge of the woods and fell tree.
Hmm.
She's been treeing coon ever since.
Yeah.
She was ready. She just
Yeah.
couldn't handle them distractions.
Well, example, last night there in Virginia, he's got a 15-month-old pup that's really doing good. I mean, this pup has treed well over 100 coons in an area where, it's not thick with coons, but there's coons. But he'll go find, like last night, he went 900 yards up on top of this mountain and treed in a clear cut on a den tree, okay? And it was an obvious den, smaller tree going into this den. That pup, the female, she didn't run that track or anything, but when she got in there to that tree, she was all about that tree. I mean, she was up and down, around, and she wasn't barking. He led off the tree and got a good long ways from a tree, 150, 200 yards or so, and ended up having to go back to that tree and get her. Now she's treed. I mean, she's treed with the other dog. But, she knows, and she hates a coon, but she doesn't have the desire to go find one herself, is what I see her at this point.
May not be ready yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they're only 11 months old?
Yeah. They're just 11 months old right now.
I mean, nowadays, even if they ain't any good, a lot of them will fall treed. It's just been bred in them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still pups that you got to wait a while.
Well, that's it, and we kind of have a little friendly rivalry between Keston that has the Walker pup and Mark that has the Plott. They're both the same age, just one day apart, the pups are. So right now, Mark's doing all the bragging with this Plott pup, but that could change, at any time, I know. But, well, Bruce, it's been a great visit with you. We've done about almost an hour and 45 minutes, if you can believe it. But lay something on me here that you've been thinking about or whatever that we can share to either a story or something about a dog that you've learned and you want to share or whatever, and we'll close this thing down.
Well, early on, I found out every dog's different, and that's why it's hard to give people advice on a dog they're telling me about, because they might leave out the one thing that they need to tell me. It can make a difference. Like your pup, I'd probably put her in the box every night I went and not let her out until it did make her mad. Because if she's got anything in her, she ain't gonna like being in that box while something else is. She's been enough. She knows that other dog's treeing coons.
Yeah.
So if she's got it in her, when she's ready, she'll tell you, because she won't want to be in that box.
Yeah.
And don't break her of barking in the box then.
No, right. Yeah. For sure. Well, I think as much as she actually hates a coon, that's got to kind of come to the
Yeah, there's
surface at
something
some
in there.
point. Yeah.
Hell, get a lead coon and another dog and put her in the box and let that dog fight that lead coon right out there where she can see what's going on. I guarantee that'll make her mad. And
Yeah.
then turn that coon loose and hope that coon goes up a tree right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Something red hot
That
for her. Mhm.
I've never done that, but your pup made me think of it.
Yeah. Well,
That's going to make her mad now, because if she
yeah.
hates a coon
Yeah.
20 feet away, she's going to know what's going on and something she likes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And she's going to be
Don't be afraid to try something different.
Yeah, and she's got a beautiful tree style, barks hard at the tree and just, so much to like, so close and yet so far.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce Janssen, you've been a really great guest for our listeners today, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I wish I could slide up there to Western Indiana and hunt a night or two with you. Maybe I can do that sometime.
You'd be welcome.
Well, I appreciate it. I know I would have a great time, and I wish you a good season, you and Rip. Have you got a young dog you're working right now?
Yeah, I got a puppy that Randy Smith let me have, and he's out of Hillbilly Deluxe.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be interesting, because if you take him for a walk, all he's interested in is me. He doesn't get out and wander around. But I put a feeder out. I'm going to put some. I had foot surgery. I just started hunting again.
Okay.
And I'm going to get coons coming in there and get him interested in coons first, and then maybe the getting out and looking around will come with it.
I got you. Like you said, every dog's different, right?
Yep. He's sure different. I never had one so fascinated with me when I walked him.
Yeah.
He won't go 20 feet.
Well, he likes you. He likes you for sure. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for your time today and sharing from that vast storehouse of knowledge of dogs. And I think one of the things, the takeaway that I got from this conversation is dogs don't think like people. And we got to learn to apply the training to ways that dogs think and the way that they can absorb it. That's my big takeaway for the day.
Yep, that's important.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, you have a great day, and I really appreciate you coming on, folks. This is coon hunter Steve Fielder, the Gone to the Dogs podcast. If someone asks you, where is Steve Fielder? You tell them, well, I think he went up there to Western Indiana. He's gone to the dogs with Bruce Janssen. Have a great week, guys.